All right. How are we all tonight? We doing good? Has anyone been doing good in the last 2 weeks? At all? Have we been having a fun time? I mention this because it's been exhausting, hasn't it? A lot of people are doing quote air quotes soul searching, right? About Trump winning the election again. Except what they're actually doing is playing the blame game. Um And I want to be clear from the outset. I am perfectly happy to do that too, and will be. We will be engaging in. We'll be engaging in that entire thing. I'm kind of waiting for the election results to finish trickling in, uh, because it changes the dynamic a little bit. It's going to be Trump's not going to win an outright majority. I think he's already below 50% on the election results. Last time I checked. But he should still just barely squeak out a popular vote win. Uh, but that is part of that is understand that elections are somewhat tricky in that you like everyone the day after the election is like, oh, Kamala Harris lost by 14 million votes. And I'm just going like, wait, we haven't counted most of California yet. Arizona too. Whole place is full of people. And I saw a lot of people I know, a lot of family, a lot of other people who were talking a lot about how did this happen, and like how could people be so stupid? And I get it. I get. All right, we're back. My microphone's back. Yes, there. We'd accidentally unplugged a thing. Go lay down, Bubba. I get why people would be upset. They don't understand how this could happen. And it's easy to be afraid. It's easy to see 72 million people voting for Donald Trump and going, holy shit, 72 million people in this country are horrifically fascistic. And I want to be clear, there are some people who are horribly fascistic. Hey, Viclet, there are some people who revel in cruelty and revel in what will be happening to certain people, many of whom are in this audience, who are cruel. But I don't think that's the majority of people. And here's why I don't think that's the majority of people. If you've listened to me at all, you've heard me talk in the past about working at a call center for 6 years. And I've been like, to a certain extent, I have been mum's the word on where the call center was, what it was doing, and whatnot. But let's talk about what I did. I was living in Chicago and working in a suburb of Chicago. And the call center I worked for was the electric company in the area I lived in. You can go look it up. You can look up who the electric company for Northern Illinois is. But suffice to say, utilities in Illinois, gas, electric, water to a certain extent, are regulated. They're regulated through an organization called the Illinois Commerce Commission. They are a state-funded agency. It has their own police force, weirdly enough. I'm not entirely certain what their jurisdiction actually is. But they're a state-funded agency that turns around and goes and establishes a set of rules that govern the interactions between customers and utility companies. And as a customer service representative working in this call center, I had to understand those regulations because I was responsible for, among other things, the interactions for what happens to you after your power gets cut for non-payment. And the Illinois Commerce Commission is a regulatory body. It exists to protect people. It exists to protect them from overzealous utility companies. It exists to protect them from abuses of their rights in those cases. It outlines projects and procedures so that they have an opportunity, for example, to avoid that interruption in service. All of which are important to follow because you get fined the other way or sued or both. And all these things are regulated by law, and they're regulated in Springfield by law. One of the aspects of electricity delivery is the concept of who owns the power plant, right? The supply and the delivery. Who owns the lines and equipment used to take electricity from a power generation station, like a power plant, nuclear, chemical, coal, etc., to your house? This traditionally was two companies in Illinois for a very long time. One of them was the one I worked for. It was decided, roughly in the 90s, that this is an unacceptable monopoly. So they took the generation stations that were owned by that company that I worked for, and they spun them off into their own other company. All which was owned by a parent company, who then proceeded to buy up other utility companies around the country. The company in question is Exelon. They own Chicago's utilities and most of northern Illinois. For electricity, they own the nuclear plants in Illinois. They own the generation stations in Philadelphia, and among other places that escape me at the moment. And the decision was made that the delivery company would remain as is because it was too much of a hassle to try to regulate multiple delivery companies in an area and to create overlapping responsibility and whose power pole is whose, etc. The decision about suppliers, however, was decided to be left up to the customers. It was quote unquote deregulated. And in this environment, there are multiple different kinds of customers, right? Your home is a residential location, but a business would be a commercial location. The concept of selling different power suppliers to residents was largely ignored by these companies for a variety of reasons. Chief among them was the law, and the law said that the only person who was allowed, the only company and entity allowed to cut power to gain restitution for repayment is the electric company, delivery company itself. So the supply companies could go into this market at any time they wanted, but they couldn't recoup losses if someone didn't pay the bill, and these wouldn't have been large enough sums to justify going to court. The risk was too high for them to do that. So they would sell their services to different large-scale companies, manufacturers, and data centers and the like. It was about the early aughts when this changed, and what happened is they came up with a new billing scheme for Illinois. Under this billing scheme, the delivery company, the company I worked for, could send out your bill, and on that bill you would have a section for the delivery company's charges and a section for a separate supplier that was paid to the supplier. But the way it worked was that a supplier now got paid by us, irrespective of whether or not we got paid by the customer. And we were responsible now and capable of recouping that loss through service cuts. So suddenly, the whole system that you existed under previously is upended. All of a sudden, people who existed on a daily basis found themselves being accosted by salespeople. Two particular kinds of salespeople, one of which was illegal, and the other one which was just unethical. The first one, let's talk about the unethical one. This would be a person, a college kid, for example, hired by one of these supply companies to go up to your house, knock on your door, and ring your doorbell and ask to see your electric bill. And when they saw it, they'd say, I want to give you this particular rate. They don't really tell you what company they're from. They get your account number. They have you sign a contract. and they change that supplier portion on your bill. This is commonly called slamming when people still had landlines and got hit by this for long distance carriers. The second way was a person would come up to your door, say, we want to make sure you're receiving a discount, ask to see your power bill, write down your account number, and vamoose, take it back. And these kids get paid by commission, how many accounts they bring in. So they're not really well incentivized, to be honest, or accurate at any rate, to ride just up to that line of legality and or over it if they can to make some money. And so what happens is you have a situation in which a person is going along and paying their electric bill, and it's a thing you do. You turn on your lights, right? And all of a sudden it works. And you pay your bill and it works, and it's what you expect it to be. It's the same, roughly the same month after month after month. And then suddenly you get a bill that's massively higher. Because you have a new company that is in charge of that supply, and instead of a reasonable rate, they're charging you double or triple. And this is a situation that a lot of people found themselves in. And then they would turn around, and because the bill is issued by the delivery company, they call me, who worked at the delivery company, and they say, "Why is my bill so high?" And this is a question that you get asked a lot in a lot of utility type situations. And sometimes the answer is, you just used a lot of electricity. But oftentimes the answer was also, well, your supplier got switched. And here's the kicker. I worked for a company that was required to provide you with a supply option that it did not make money on, revenue neutral. And that price, depending on the 6 years I worked there, it got to be 5 cents per kilowatt hour for a little bit, but then it went up to 7. And this was, it's very difficult to compete against steel, right? If I can offer you a product with no profit incentive, and I just have to offer it at the rate at which I bought it, it's very difficult to compete with that. So the way these companies would work is they would give you like a couple introductory months where they give you a very low rate, so you wouldn't notice. And then after that, a couple months, it would go up. And it would go up a lot. I would see it routinely go up to double or triple the rate the customer is paying. I saw one time the rate wasn't even printed on the bill. It was so goddamn high. I took the kilowatt hours and divided them by the cost of the service, and I found out this person was paying 38 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. That was, at least in Illinois at the time, insanity. And this is tricky because I'm not allowed as an agent to tell you what companies do what and what companies charge what. I'm not allowed to impress upon you or enter the company into competition in any way. So, like, I am the person who is sitting there with all the information, and the law prohibits me from giving you the information you need to make an informed decision. So the necessary thing becomes that I sit there for 6 years and watch person after person be taken advantage of. And there's nothing I can do. I mean, I can see what to do. I know what to do. I look at it every day, but there's nothing I can legally do. I can't do that without losing my job. And this is, I think, an interesting thing. Because you see what has happened here is that the regulations that are designed to give you choices are not giving you choices, not necessarily because you're being a fool, but because people are taking advantage of your ignorance of what the range of options is. And it's about a thing that just works, right? Your electricity tends to just work unless the power goes out. And it's not like you yourself have done something wrong. It's along the lines of someone else has done something to you, and they've used the system that's supposed to protect you to do it to you. It's frustrating. It made people mad. It made them upset. And like, there wasn't any like way to address it en masse. And you might ask, what does this have to do with people voting for Donald Trump? And that's a fair question. Indulge me for a moment, would you? People don't necessarily know what goes into their world. And that's okay. The idea of me doing a job is so that you don't have to do the job. The garbage man comes and they take the garbage away and they throw it in a landfill. You don't have to do that. The water turns, you turn the faucet, the water comes out proper. You don't have to go in and do the plumbing. You can call a plumber if it doesn't work. People do different jobs because things are complicated. You cannot reasonably be expected to understand everything in the world. Except apparently when it comes to time to vote. There are a whole bunch of people, like I said before, a whole bunch of people who voted for Donald Trump out of spite. But there are a whole set of other people that seem to have voted for Donald Trump because they're mad at things they don't quite get. For example, you see Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy coming up and saying, we're going to be in DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. It's not a real department. It already exists. It's called the Government Accountability Office, and it has a congressional mandate and powers granted by Congress. And it's very unlikely that Congress is going to be completely willing to give up their congressional oversight of the United States government to Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. But they're still talking about it, and people are excited about it, and they're generating hype about it. People are taking advantage of the lack of understanding of the system to try and build and feather their nest. Like Elon Musk has said, I'm going to make Doge merchandise. People are looking around at their lives and they're seeing something fundamentally wrong, and no one is coming to address that. And this has been a constant thing, right? 2008, it's a very tight race between Barack Obama and John McCain. Very tight, very tight, very tight. Boom, financial crash. Suddenly it switches over to Obama and he wins. Why? Because something bad happened to people. Something bad happened to people, and someone said, I'm going to fix this, and there's going to be change. And to Barack Obama's credit, there was a little change. But nothing fundamental changed about most people's situations. And if you look at us as a people over time, what are we like constantly asking for? We're constantly looking for someone to come and take away the problem. And we are being told that the problem is the little things that we don't understand, the thing that happens behind the scenes. When that is the problem, but it's not going to be fixed by someone coming along and telling you that trans kids can't exist anymore, or that the Bible has to go back in classrooms. It's people taking advantage of those things. And I know it looks scary, especially for so many of us right now. People who are disabled like myself, people who are trans. It looks scary because it looks like people are out to kill us, and to be told, some of them are. And if that happens, well, I hope we can all stay friends. We're in separate concentration camps. But I don't think that's everyone. I think for a lot of people, they're just mad about the things they don't quite understand and get frustrated by, that people don't get to explain to them. It's how we get along in the world. Is we can't necessarily always know everything. We specialize. I am an American military historian. Don't ask me to go into the history of ancient Burma, for example. Someone goes, they become a lawyer, they specialize in a field of law. You do a job, you start to specialize. Even in a grocery store, you find people who stack shelves and people who are cashiers and baggers, and they tend to do the same goddamn things. It's because we get good at a thing, and we do the thing, and we stay good at the thing. But that doesn't mean we necessarily understand all the other things that happen to make the other stuff happen. If you catch my meaning. Yes, government merchandise. Someone's going to smack Elon Musk on the head. You just watch. And I think I think that's important to realize, though. People are mad, which means that their anger might override their judgment, and that's bad for a lot of people. But it's also not permanent. It becomes a thing that you can overcome. It becomes a place that means that down the line someone's convincible. I look at the numbers, and I've been crunching a lot of numbers lately, and all the things that I see people saying about how things are too woke doesn't really add up. Like, people are mad, but they're not necessarily mad about that. It's just a good excuse, it looks like. And I'm going to talk about this in much more detail in a video coming out hopefully next week. But the overall thing is, I think there's an opening for people who understand, to convince people to come along on this journey with us of fixing the problem. And it might come down to that kind of thing where you have to sit and talk like I just did about a seemingly irrelevant system of billing, and how that pans out. And it might come down to acknowledging things that feel silly to acknowledge, like you paid $50 more for electricity this month. Because you look at all the indicators and everyone says, well, inflation was the chief issue. And they're saying, well, inflation is down, and it was. But that doesn't matter much if people still can't afford what they need. You see the thing, and that's how we get someone like Trump, because Trump will come along and he will tell you that I understand that things are bad, and that feels so fucking good, doesn't it? Someone coming along and acknowledging that you're hurting. And he'll say, and I will fix it. And that's even better. And it doesn't matter that Trump's not going to fix those things. It doesn't matter that the things he said won't actually, like I'm going to raise tariffs. Well, what'll that do? It'll increase prices. Who will it increase prices on? It'll increase prices on all the people who buy places from goods that are principally overseas. Like, for example, if you're out in a rural community and all your local is a Farm and Fleet and a Walmart, and both those places import goods from China, the prices will go up. And a tariff will hurt you, the person who voted for the guy who put the tariff in office. Why? Why is that going to hurt you? Because you didn't understand what a tariff did? Should we find that funny? A little bit. We should find that a little funny, but we probably shouldn't mention that we find it funny. To take the time to explain that tariffs have historically caused the lower and middle classes to pay far more for goods and services they consume than the rich, who generally absorb or avoid the tariffs altogether through smuggling. Coincidentally, while we're talking about history for a second, it's remarkable when you get into it how much the American experience is defined by people who are rich who want to smuggle goods into the United States. Tariffs used to run the whole federal government, pay for everything. Most of those tariffs coming in through the port of New York. New York paid for virtually most of the government up until the Civil War. Talk about a tax imbalance there. Or people who are clamoring for deportations. Are deportations bad? Are they prohibitively expensive? Yes, absolutely. Should they only be done in extreme circumstances? Yes. Should we reform immigration? Yeah. Dramatically. But in the meantime, you have to acknowledge that we have a underclass of people in the United States who do our agriculture, work that we don't want to do, Onions are principally planted and replanted by hand, for example. A lot of places are weeded by hand. And our restaurant businesses, a lot of janitorial jobs, whole bunch of jobs that now you don't see regular Americans clamoring for. An undocumented immigrant will do. We need those people, at least in the short term. Those people not doing those jobs will hurt people. And if those things happen, there's an avenue by which you can argue to explain it and to fix the problem later on. RFK Jr. wants to get rid of vaccines, or as he says, subject them to rigor, scientific rigor, which I don't quite understand, because if you they have been subjected to scientific rigor. If you're not convinced that they're useful, then no amount of scientific rigor will convince you going forward. But here we are. Kids will get sick. They'll die. If he tries to push artificial high-caloric food out of the market, companies will make food much more expensively. Fewer people will be able to buy it. People get sick. Kids will go hungry and die. Bad things are going to happen if these things happen. If the things that Trump and his supporters want to happen will happen. These things will happen, and people won't understand them. And the things that they relied on every day, the light switches and the garbage cans and the water faucets, all the things that we count on will stop working properly. And it will be time to explain why, and why we don't do things like vote for Donald Trump. And if we're going to do something in the long term, that's what you have to aim to do. You have to be ready to have the argument next time. The argument can't be, oh, Donald Trump is bad. It's like, these things happened. Donald Trump did them. Donald Trump's supporters did them, and they were bad. That's compelling, because that affects people's lives in a very real way. As much as it is true that like living in a authoritarian state affects your life, people tend to care more if their house doesn't work, much sooner than they'll care about the rest. And that sucks, but it's how you regain ground. It's how you regain ground against misinformation. Because if the misinformation has a price, if it costs you to live in a world of misinformation, then people will choose to ignore misinformation and seek out better information. The key to bad speech is not better speech. The key to bad speech is understanding the consequences of your actions. Fuck around, find out. And it's going to be hard. It's going to suck. But it is what it is. It's what we have, where we have to go. We have Trump because to people who don't understand things, everything is a conspiracy. We shouldn't ask people to understand everything. You shouldn't have to be well informed about Israel and Russia and Saudi Arabia to vote for a president. You shouldn't have to understand tariffs and marginal tax brackets. Those are the things that you do every day in life, and they should just fucking work. And politicians shouldn't lie about them, and I get that. I do. But politicians do lie about these things. Groups like the Anti-Defamation League will try to tell you that criticizing Israel is anti-Semitism, and they'll try to take away your rights very slowly over time under good pretenses. And people will let them because they're bad. Or people will say, my taxes are too high, and I don't get the services I want from my taxes. And we should get rid of the IRS because it's horrible, even though the IRS makes it possible to not have to overpay on taxes in the first place. They don't understand. But they will. I don't want to keep you guys too long tonight. I know you've all got stuff going on. I'm more tired than I used to be. We're probably going to do these little teeny short streams more often. At least I will try to do them every Friday. Maybe more, if we can. I'm working, like I said, on a video about why Harris lost and what we do going forward politically. But the place you got to put yourself in, the place that we're going to have to put ourselves in, the first place is stay alive as best you can. Do what you can. Reach out. We have a mutual aid channel. If you need help, tell me, and I will let me know what's happening. I will blast it to as many people as I can. If you need help, tell me. I'll do what I can. I can't promise it's much, but I'll do what I can. The second thing we have to do is to be ready to have these discussions in a way that moves people away from being comfortable with letting people take advantage of them and creating the environment for letting people take advantage of them. And that's all I got for you. I know it's hard. Sunday's doing drama with Aiko. Go watch that for a little bit. It should be funny. Maybe. It wasn't that funny when I left. Maybe it's funny now. And ultimately, have a good night. Pay attention for that video next week. I think it'll be a banger.